Welcome to the Frontend Coffee Break, the podcast where we take a break from our daily lives and enjoy a cup of coffee, joe, tea, beer, if you will, if you're after hours, and chat about frontend development, frontend space. We're frontenders, so that's what we like. Chucho Castañeda, how are you today?
Hello, Ricardo. All good. This time, as usual, I'm taking a decaf. It's not spiked or
That's
anything.
What you say.
That's a new system. I think it'll be noticeable when I put something extra in the coffee, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
Even more happy, more energetic. Right. So episode 31, that's a lot of episodes. And I think today we wanted to do a little bit of meta talking, and not meaning the company behind Instagram or Facebook, Meta, but talking about the podcast in the podcast, or with podcasting. It's about podcasting today. It's about how we started, how it happened. And I think it's interesting for those out there, maybe, I don't know, thinking about it or just, not thinking about it. Now we will think about it. So Chucho, go ahead.
I agree with you. It's in a way, it's a little bit related to the first episode that we did some time ago, the one regarding on blogging. Why should we blog and recommendations about blogging? This is, a little bit in the same direction. It's like sharing knowledge or you yourself learning something new and then sharing it or practicing, trying out new abilities or such. We've had this podcast this is the 31st episode, but we already have, I don't know how many episodes, over 100 or so in the internal podcast. Because this podcast originally started as an internal thing 3 years ago, and I was looking at the dates to prepare for this podcast, and I think we started the first internal podcast that we did was the February 22nd, 2001. Can you believe it's been 3 years already?
In one? No, one. 21.
21, sorry.
I understood the one.
No, I said 2021. I mean, 3 years already, and it's been quite a run. So I think that it's interesting to share our experience on how the podcast came to be. Both podcasts, the internal that we don't talk that much about, but I think that's the one that we do every single week, almost every single week, except in summer. And then the external one that we don't have, we don't invest that much time in it, but we do it from time to time. And maybe this would help others that are interested in the topic. Like they say, hey, I want to do a podcast, but I'm not sure how to do it. Maybe it's too much time, how to handle it regarding in my company and such. So let's talk a little bit about that. Do you remember how this podcast started?
Of course I do. Well, I think it's interesting also to mention, because you keep saying internal. I think people need to understand a little bit, like this internal stuff means it's only for the company ears or eyes only, because we usually talk about internal stuff not to be released, not to be talked outside. Like maybe we're talking about clients or specific implementations or just, company affairs that are not meant to be talked outside. So that's the scope more or less. So just quickly, the first thoughts I have or memories I have about the internal, or not internal, but I remember you and I, Raul and Jaimena, we were just, having a coffee break at the office back when we were going to the offices. And we were just chatting about development, right? We were chatting about, look what I did this week, or what I discovered, or what new framework out there. So just chatting at the office.
That was one of the great things, that when you go remote, it's not that easy or natural, doesn't come that natural, which is the out of the blue conversations that you might have in the coffee room, in the water room or whatever. I remember that we discussed about having these chats on purpose, because the relationship that you and I have in the company is also as PSL protege, and we were trying just to sort of put a little bit of to grow internally, to grow in knowledge, and we decided to talk, hey, let's have a coffee break. We invite and chat about technology, what happened during the week, invite Raul and Javi, that they were also people that you can actually talk to and have a nice conversation with. And we started doing that on Fridays. Whenever we tried to find a time, went there, had a coffee, literally, and just chatted like, hey, what did you see this week that was interesting? And we just started chatting from there. It was super nice.
very like old fashioned. No, I mean the conversations at the bar or at the pub. It's like just physical. Not thinking about sharing links or social media. Just just chatting. And that was fantastic. And yeah, I think at some point somebody just dropped the joke that, hey, these chats are interesting. We should start a podcast. But it was a joke, right? It was not serious.
A little bit. And I've heard that like it's the typical thing that you're at a bar with friends, as you say, just chatting about something and you say, hey, we should do a podcast about this. You laugh it off and you do nothing. And that happened to us. But then the pandemic came and everybody had to go because I think we started 2019 maybe doing this. I think it was back then that we started talking and chatting and such. And then the pandemic came and we went to work from home. We were forced to work from home. And eventually Cognizant and Centric said that would be the thing, that we would be working from home from now on. And it was not exactly the same. I don't know how you felt it. I felt a little bit disconnected with the rest of the company, but we still tried to keep the contact, right? I don't remember because I think we started having the same chats, the same conversations in the sense that we got together through Slack and we had this conversation with Raul and Javi at the end chatting about stuff, the pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. So having a video call on Slack on Fridays. We moved from physical office to just having a 4-way call on Slack, and yeah, I think at that point again the joke came up again. It's just okay, we're doing a video call. We all have the headphones. Maybe some people have microphones, whatever, because you want to just work regularly. If you just press record, we already have the episode. So why not?
Yeah, and I think that was it. It didn't take a long time for us to start working on it, but it did take us a long time to get to that point because we started in March, I think, the working from home thingy, and it wasn't until the end of 2020 that we started discussing seriously, hey, let's make a podcast. And I don't know who it was, if it was you, the one that said, hey, I know this recording site that we can use, or it was Javi, or someone of the four of us said, hey, maybe we could use this, let's try it out. And once we had everything figured out in that sense, let's say that we didn't plan anything regarding equipment. We just said, hey, we need a tool to help us record it. And then we need a tool to maybe edit it a little bit. And that's it. So once we got that figured out, that we'll talk at the end of the episode regarding this, we had a chat with our front-end lead because, I mean, we could do this on our own time. But in the end, the idea was to create a small podcast that could be shared inside the internal channels for the internal people. And we'd say, hey, I would love to do it on my time, but I think that I would rather get paid for doing this, because this is for the company. How did you feel when we were discussing this? What was going through your head?
Yeah. I mean, I think we could have perfectly have done this like maybe outside of working hours, but I think we all felt that we were contributing and giving back to the company, giving back to the community, internal community, and saying, hey, if we are working on the community, it's the same thing as if I was working on wiki pages or documentation for HTML. So it felt a little bit like the same thing. So I think that when we asked for budget, like internal budget, to simply spend half an hour a week, I mean, which if we think about it, it's nothing, right? Internal cost for half an hour each week, it's nothing. And the value that you produce, I think it was way more than the cost. So it was a no-brainer.
Actually, I remember that these coffee conversations that we had spanned internal projects, more than one internal projects. One of them you yourself did, the one for the form creation, that then was taken by someone else and such. I mean, already these conversations when we were back in the office were sparking value for the company. And we thought, okay, let's move it a little bit. Fortunately, we have a very nice, very dynamic front-end community at Cognizant NetCentric, the Frontend Heroes channel, which is the name of the channel that we have, the internal front-end channel. It's every single day you have at least one or two posts. People are not only posting something, but engaging from emoticons, emojis, or just reacting to actually engaging with each other. So it's like, okay, we have a super nice community, and we were going to use that as part of what we're doing to do. I remember that I went to talk to our link lead, which is basically the head of the community, and told him, hey, we want this. Is it possible? He wasn't very convinced at first. He was like, you know, I don't know, but go ahead and do it, but try to not spend too much time in it. And I understand the concern, he thought, okay, we don't know if this is going to be good or not. We don't know how it's going to be received. So just try to not spend too much time in it, because we don't want you to, right now, there's no official budget. We don't want you to be investing too much time in it. And that was the idea that we started with. And that's, I think, part of the reason about the size of the podcast that we decided to do then, because unlike this one, which is much larger, the idea behind that one is to do around average 10-minute podcast.
Yeah. And when you think about like our system of holacracy, which is our sort of government guidelines, rules for doing work at the company, I don't know how to explain it very well, but it's like, if it doesn't hurt us, it's okay to try it out, right? So in this case, belittling Oliver Hine, he didn't block us because there was no harm on trying out. He just gave us a little bit of constraints in terms of, okay, make it short, don't spend too much time, but try it out. If it doesn't work, we stop it. If it works, fantastic, right? And I think that's one of the things that we're very unique at Content Agentic, where, hey, if there's something that you want to do, raise your hand, try it out, and we see.
I mean, we could have gone through the more official procedure, as you say, through holacracy, and go to the circle and ask for the budget, and they might have discussed giving us the budget, but we weren't entirely sure. We did that later, but at that point, we just said, hey, we want to do the experiment. They said, go ahead. They empowered us, say, go ahead, try it out, and let's see how it takes. And that's when we started the discussion, like, okay, what do we want to do? I remember that we talked about different ideas, so let's do it like this, let's do it like that, which format are we going to take? And we ended up having a quite nice format, saying, hey, the Slack channel is super vibrant. There's a lot of traffic there. Why don't we take each one of us one single topic from that channel, and just do a comment about it? Like, oh, I liked this, that it was shared by this person, and this is what I think. And the rest, if they found something interesting about it, they would say, oh, I agree, I don't agree, blah, blah, blah. Always trying to keep it short. And that's how we went for the first episode back in February 22, 2021. And it was a total of 5 minutes and 11 seconds.
When I think about it, it was very fast. 5 minutes. It's not like, what did we talk about? I need to rewatch it because it was very fast. But the format is not very like groundbreaking. I think it feels like a little bit like evening news, right? It's just a summary of what happened. Exactly. What happened this week in the Slack channels, right? And then you list, of course, we were not going through everything, but just highlights, I love this view article. I love that new package, new frameworks, whatever. And I think that's also something that people wanted to, because you can get like saturated with too much content, social media. Now X, Twitter, whatever, it's just too much, right? And having these sort of quote-unquote experts just summarize the most interesting stuff on the week, in 5 minutes, why not, right?
And that was the idea, and I loved it. The first one, I listened to it again, and it was super fast, like, hey, welcome to a Frontend Coffee Break. And what did you find interesting this week, Javi? What did you find interesting? And I remember the discussions, like, every time that you say you nominate someone, that other person has to nominate the next one, and so that we could keep the chain. I remember all these things that came up, like, how are we going to do it? Who's going to be next? Right now, it comes so natural when we're doing it. It's super strange, but we started just like that. Choose one news that you saw interesting and comment it. And it's super nice because, as you say, we do have a lot of engagement. We do have a lot of stuff that we share. But some people, it's like, beside they tell me, okay, sometimes it's a little bit too much. I miss one or two things, so I don't know. And it was a great way to go to do a summary about what we did, and to what the community has done, and for people to engage in that thing. At first, I think that we started doing just a picture of ourselves. So in the first, because it was a video, a picture of ourselves, and then we just shared in every topic, we shared a screenshot. Whether, for example, if we were talking about, I don't know, maybe Google I/O, we would put an image of the Google I/O event. If we were talking about GitHub, something like that. Maybe even post conversations or links or the pages. And that was it. We put the image and we were just discussing. And eventually it nicely started evolving into something more. I don't know if you remember what happened when Javi left the company. So he left us. What we did, that we started discussing. Okay, what do we need to do? And what we decided is to invite someone.
We cried a little bit.
Yes, we did. Javi, you're listening to you. We still miss you.
Yes, please come back. Of course, when the host leaves, we need to rethink the format, see if we need more people, less people. And in the end, I think it worked out fine that we stayed the three of the main hosts, let's say, and then we started rotating in like people from the community, giving them a voice as well. Not only having us as the news anchors, but rather just, pull in more people, to give them the opportunity to speak, to also like empower them to, hey, maybe you never spoke before in a more wide audience, just try it out. It's a very safe space. There's no live questions. It's just a recording. So it's rather easy, right? So yeah, I think that was very good for the community. And I've been approached several times where people said, oh, I love being in the podcast, or people like, they brag about it. They say, oh man, I was in that podcast. I was presenting 3 episodes. So people are really like, happy or like proud. Exactly, proud.
And it took us, as you say, we tried to this. We decided, okay, we have our fourth, which the number worked well, although sometimes it feels a little bit overwhelming because of the amount of people that have to interact. But the format worked well because it was okay, each one of us say something and that's it. But we found out that 3 is like a very nice number. So we usually do a lot of episodes only the 3 of us. But we have people, we invite people, and when we invite people, one of us usually just stays behind a little bit. But it's always a nice interaction. So as a recommendation, if you want to do something like this, 2 or 3 people are really good amount to do it, and having a fourth, it's still okay. But we decided to do this, just invite people, and I'm super happy about this. People that were shy even joined us. And we even have just 2 weeks ago someone that it took us literally years to convince to come and record with us. She was like, no, when I have some topic to talk about, I'll be there, not this time, blah, blah, blah. And eventually we found a topic that she wanted to talk about, and she was there, and she was amazing. And I'm super happy. It is a very nice platform to just express yourself and talk about whatever you want. And usually that's what we do. We have a guest. We tell them, hey, what do you want to talk about? If not, let's go back to the basics, which is choose a news, choose something that was shared, and talk about it.
Yeah, and especially we need to reiterate that this is an internal thing. The maximum people you will see is the company itself. It will never be shared outside. So it's really even safer than what we're doing, you and I here. We're going to YouTube, we're going to Spotify, and all those things. And yeah, people will watch it or not. But this is more exposure. In that case, the internal thing, I think it's very healthy. I really like when we start rotating, not only inviting front-end developers, but also inviting back-end engineers, quality assurance guys, project managers, business consultants to get another input. Oh, of course, it's always about front-end, right? But getting a different perspective on how they see front-end, how they approach front-end. If you're a consultant, how much front-end do you have to know, and things like that. So I really like when we find other people from other communities to join us.
I think I lost you for a little bit.
What else?
There we go. Yeah. Sorry, I lost you for a little bit. And I'm always surprised when people from other communities, especially people that you think that they're like in a very different environment, like working on business and such, they say, oh yeah, I listen to you. It's like, what? You really listen to us? Yeah. It doesn't mean that they listen to us constantly, but they do listen to some episodes. So we've invited them over, and we've had amazing episodes then talking about other things that are not exactly front-end, but that do affect the front-end. We've talked about architecture, the future of the company. We recently have the first person that's retiring from the company. We invited him over to talk a little bit about his experience. It's been super, super, super nice always.
Talking about amazing episodes, you just said amazing episodes, and I wanted to ask you, what are for you, if you can recall, for the internal podcast, the best moments or best episodes?
I think that one of the greatest things that we had in the podcast is that we've let our creativity just roll. especially
Go wild.
Go
Yeah.
Wild, Raul, which he only helps us in the internal podcast because we invited him to do this when he said no, thank you. He has this background in design, and he's done animations and amazing stuff. And you could see the story in the beginning of the podcast, the introduction. You can see small stories developing throughout the episode. That was one fantastic thing. And two of my favorite episodes are, first, when we invited developer Potato. We found this filter in Snapchat and that says you to Potato, and we interviewed Potato. It was the Potato only said potato, but it was an amazing episode. And the other one was when you were missing, and we substituted you for
Thank you.
ChatGPT.
Yeah, that's best episode when you were not here. Excellent. Thank you.
It's not because of that, but it was because of the creativeness. It took us a little bit longer than usual because to set up everything up, because we had ChatGPT, we talked to it and it responded through a plugin. Not they have something similar right now. It would have been easy, but back then, put your picture on a computer and then we amazing. And how about you? Do you have any highlights of things that you've seen in the episode?
Yes, and I have two more. One when you were not here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry to but it was funny how we you told us you were not coming to that 2 weeks episode, and then you recorded a message before the thing, and then we put it with post production at the end, and people were not expecting you to be there. That was funny, and also some live coding sessions that we did. But those are not as easy to produce anymore. I think lately, for this season, this 5th season that we're doing an internal one, I think we've gone a little bit down on post-production. We want to speed up post-production just to record and then get it out. So we're not doing as much live codings or adding animations. We're just, using a software, export on a grid format and then publish. So yeah.
But from time to time we do take it all the way and we do something special. But yeah, usually we've been making it more efficient, which is nice. I mean, we've learned about throughout the time, and we've made it more efficient. Now, before we go to the external podcast, let's talk a little bit about what would you say that the impact that it has in summary in the community, besides helping people get more exposure, helping them express themselves. Do you see any other positive impact that the internal podcast has had in the community?
I mean, that's already a lot. That's already sharing knowledge. I think we as front-enders, we just do it. I mean, when I go online, I see other front-end developers from other companies, they just share links, they share articles, they have blogs, they have YouTube channels, they do live coding. I think we front-enders, more than other communities, we just like to share because there's just so many news out there for a new framework every week. So for once, I like a lot that we are, spreading more knowledge and trying to teach others. Maybe if we talk about continuous integration, some people don't know about it. So maybe the junior that just joined, now he knows a little bit, 10 minutes, and then the curiosity spark is there, and then they just learn on their own or whatever. So I think it's nice, and also just making community, bringing others in, and just enhancing it and making the company a fun place to work.
I completely agree. The podcast, I think that one of the best impacts is how it's helped bring the community together. So, how did we jump from the internal podcast to the external one? At Cognizant and Centric, we had a podcast already, an external podcast. The Frontend Heroes, but I don't know if you'd like to tell the story about how we started this.
Sure. I mean, it's very easy. So again, we said that the internal podcast was 7 minutes, 10 minutes maximum, and I think everybody here can agree, especially you, the listeners listening in. 10 minutes to talk a deep dive into a front-end topic is just not possible, right? I mean, it's just scratching the surface of anything. If we're talking about Svelte, HTML, JavaScript, promises, arrays, it doesn't really matter. It's just not enough, especially with 10 or 3 people or 4 people. It's just, you just get a few sentences in. So we thought we need a longer format. We need maybe less host and just, talk longer and deeper about some of these topics that we love and want to share. So yeah, we are here, 30 minutes podcast usually. So yeah, I love it.
We used to have, as I said, Cognizant and Centrica podcast, but eventually the hosts couldn't continue with it. We were supposed to take over, but it didn't happen. And after a year, you and I remember that we discussed about it, and we created a different format from what they had because it was nice. It's an amazing podcast. You can still listen to it, Frontend Heroes. And but we wanted something a little bit different, and that's why we started with with this one. But now, and now we have the support of the company, thankfully. But would you say what would you need to have to do in order to record a podcast, equipment-wise, software-wise? I mean, how do we record?
I think you can go crazy, of course, when you look at people online and big podcasts. But I think getting started, it's very easy. I mean, if you have a phone, if you have a laptop, you're already set. Like ideally, sure, you can have headphones to prevent echo. Ideally, you can have a better microphone. But already, like if you have a MacBook, the microphone of the MacBook is okay. The camera is okay. You have a phone, the same thing, right? So really, you don't need as much hardware. I think probably you already have everything you need at home. And you can get dedicated webcams or whatever, but I think it's very low. And the software barrier, it's also very, very easy. I mean, you could, as low as barrier as possible, you could just go to Google Meet and do a call and record that call because it's already featured in. You can go into record the video call and you could use that.
Yeah.
Right. There are softwares. We use a software, of course, which is more convenient, that allows you to split the tracks, download separately the tracks, whatever. So that's easier. But really, the barrier for entry into a podcast world, it's very minimal. I would say
super low. I agree. You don't need fancy lights, and that's coming from a guy that has all the colored lights at home. But this is something that I had previous to the podcast. You don't need fancy lights. You don't need fancy equipment. The only thing that you need is a well-lit place. And our recommendation, or the recommendation that you always give to people, is that get headphones. It always helps out, especially to avoid the noise that comes from the speakers. Get headphones at least. If you can get a headphone with a microphone, it doesn't have to be high quality. Just it's better to have the microphone near the mouth, and that's it. I mean, we do have equipment, but I've invested this way before the podcast, but you don't really need that fancy equipment to start it. You can really, if you're interested, you say, "Oh, I don't have the fancy equipment." You don't need it. Just sit down, find a nice place that you could like to sit it. Get headphones, a microphone, cheap, and that's it. And software, as you said, there's a lot of free software, and editing is really not that complex. You're editing some of the episodes nowadays, right? What are you using?
Yeah, I mean, again, we've gone from Raul doing all these magic animations to now it's a very straightforward process for the internal, right? For the internal episodes. Again, the software we use online, it allows us to already create a video version with the four of us on a grid. It's already on the cloud. It already matches the audio levels. I just download that and I put the intro and the outro on a template using Adobe Premiere, but it could be a free software. It doesn't really matter. And really, it takes me maybe 10 minutes to just, download that, put it in there, export it, and put it into our internal Google Drive. So really, it's very straightforward. For the external, though, we want a little bit more of quality. So we send it to professionals who retouch a little bit our voices and then the camera or whatever, and put the lower thirds. And because again, it's just external, but you don't need to. Really, you don't need to. It's. I think content is king as everything.
Yes.
So really, if you're talking interesting stuff, doesn't matter.
So if you are ever curious about it, don't wonder anymore. Just go ahead and do it. Find someone that you have. You can begin by having simple conversations. You can start recording maybe. You just can just get comfortable talking with your friend. You probably already have a friend that you already have comfortable conversations. Just sit down and record it. It's as simple as that, but it's really, believe us, it's the complexity is not that big. And if you can push it in your company, you can suggest it. You can even show them this video. Say, hey, there's a video of these two guys that they do it in Cognizant and Centric. They tell us how to do it. They told us that the investment is not that big. They told us the benefits. Please show this podcast to them, and we can say, hey, sir, if you're listening to this, and you're someone that works with you in the company is telling you that there's benefit from it, listen to them, because there is a positive benefit of having a podcast. It doesn't have to be external, but internally, it's been super, super nice. Now, we've learned a lot of things throughout the time. We've improved our podcasting abilities. But what would you say, for example, what recommendations would you give of things that you learned throughout the way, or things that you didn't think at the beginning, but then they said, hey, let's do this? Do you have anything that comes into mind?
Yeah, I think maybe just two things that we've learned to do. One is like having metrics. I mean, I hate analytics, of course, as everyone else here. But I think it's not too bad to, I think for the internal episodes, we use Bitly, which is an URL shortener that simply tracks the clicks to know if this episode was more interesting to the community or less, because we all know how people, it's hard to get them to leave comments, even if it's an internal Slack.
Yes.
So just having that click counter allows us to more or less know, okay, this was, people like more these topics or less topics, whatever. And the second thing really is just, blogging 101, like being a little bit clickbaity.
Yes.
But it's not something for just podcasting, but anything you post on the internet, right? When we posted the video with just a link to the video, it doesn't really work. When we add a screenshot, that's nice. When we add the description of the text and it's a question and it's a little bit of challenging, it's a little bit like controversial, it works even better. But again, that's not something we invented or that works for the podcast, works for everywhere.
Yeah, and we always try to ask a question at the end of these episodes so people would engage, because if you just leave it like that, people maybe comment on what they think. But ask a question about the episode. What did you think? What did you like? What specific about the topic? And try to invite people to engage with you. It works, but it is good to have the idea of how many people are listening to you, so you can say the numbers. Hey, this is it. But you always see the engagement. You always see when people are talking about it. And we have every single year we ask people, hey, give us feedback about the podcast. Tell us, do you like it? What would you like to change? Blah blah blah. Fortunately, we've had very positive feedback, and I'm very happy and glad about it. But what's next? What would you say that comes next?
I wish I had the magic plan or the success plan. It's hard. For the internal, from my point of view, I would love to continue seeing other non-front-end developers join us, like in the conversation. Right? I love to see other points of view, especially again QA or project managers. How do they approach the front end? I mean, do they think we are just wizards and then do magic stuff, just coloring? I don't know. So for me, it's interesting also to know what we need to emphasize maybe on client meetings or team meetings. How can we make our jobs like maybe more visible, or maybe we're too, I don't know, too worried about something that is not there. So really, I love to see other points of view for internal. What about you?
Generally, I like the way that we do it, and I would love to see more participation of the rest of the community. We sometimes try to reach out, but most of the time they are very, very agreeable. They say, yes, I want to participate, but sometimes it's a little bit hard. I would love to see every single person in the community come over, and I would even see in the future people taking over the podcast from us. We continue there, but 3 new people completely take over the podcast, and they continue for a period, maybe even rotate us ourselves. I would love to see permanent rotation somehow. I think that this project, I hope that we ever leave the company, that this project goes on without us, because that would be the ultimate,
Okay, because I thought you were kicking me out.
No.
Okay, you meant when we're not here because we retired already. 40 years. Got it.
And for the external, what would you like to see?
I think we need some guests, but that's very hard, right? Because internally, it's one thing, as we said before, but having guests for the external, you got to know that this is on YouTube or other things. You have to consider other stuff. You're representing a company and the community, yourself, of course. So I don't know. I would like to see people here. It's not easy to talk to a camera and knowing it's live. It's hard. So I don't know. Maybe it's not even people from the company. Maybe it's front-end gurus out there we can interview, perhaps. But again, that's also hard to convince them to come to this small podcast, even 30 episodes, but it's still, we're small. So I don't know. What would you like to see?
Well, I like the direction that we're taking, and inviting other people would be nice from time to time. It doesn't have to be every single episode. It doesn't have to be the main dynamic. But I like the idea to start consulting or asking or inviting people and give it so that they give us a point of view. We've had already 2 internal guests from our company, and those episodes were amazing. And I would like to see more guests internally or externally. So maybe let's try that. But I'll ask the audience, what would you like us to what would you like to see? Where would you like to go, or for us to go? Would you like to participate? Just please comment and tell us.
Give us feedback in the comment sections. As usual, please subscribe, the bell, everything that you do with us. And if you're not on YouTube, just Spotify, whatever, rate us 10 stars. No, just 5 stars. I don't know anymore how this works. Chucho, thank you so much for today, man.
Ricardo, thank you, and thank you for all the nice times in the episodes.
Yeah, and to all of you, see you in the next Frontend Coffee Break.
See you then. Bye.